Title is exactly what it says on the tin. I rant about opinions that have some popularity or I see constantly time and time again, whilst trying to remain somewhat civil. This content is a lazy form of content, meaning these videos have little to no research put into topics that they cover, thus they should not be used for any objective reason. These videos are nothing more of an opinion, and therefore I do not hate the people with those opinions, but the opinion itself. Do not harass others for having different opinions. You can debate in the comments, but please try to keep it civil. You got that? Now let's get into the video.
If you come to my channels and escape from politics, I will not respect your wishes, but I do understand your choice. At this point, I shall now permit you to leave this video. In this channel, I talk about whatever I feel like talking about, and that does mean politics. I cannot conform this channel to fit your comfortability, unfortunately. In the world of politics, I've always heard people complain about this supposed epidemic of people distancing themselves away from friends or maybe even family over political opinions or political differences. I've heard some form of you shouldn't break friendships over politics, or it's fine to be friends with someone with a different political opinion. And the problem I have with this statement is that the word politics does a lot of carrying here, and the word politics means a lot, and from this sentence it's being minimized a lot here. From the people saying it, the impact of the word politics has been completely minimized. Except some people just remove the word politics and just say opinion instead. Now, I'm gonna get into that opinion point at some bit, but let's just focus on the word politics here. See, I'm not going to play a both sides do it to each other argument, mostly because I don't believe both sides do it to each other, but I am going to explain it from what I've seen, personally. So the specific problem I have with this statement is that it implies politics is just discussing whether or not you think The Last of Us 2 was the best game of all time. Spoiler alert, it's okay at best. Or, to be a bit fairer, people think politics is just arguing whether or not the local research team needs funding or the local school. Except it's not just that. Politics is a lot more than that, especially because people aren't just simply talking about politics in a local level, it's mostly at a national level, and it's not just to do with local things. Politics has always and still does involve more serious topics, and most of the time, people aren't breaking friendships over the less serious topics, and instead the more serious topics. That's because the more serious topics actually affects people in either a good way or a harmful way. No one is breaking their friendships over the discussion of the serious topics, and instead what they've perceived is someone lacking empathy over the harm over that serious topic. Okay, you know what? The more I get into this video, this is going to start sounding very confusing. I was going to try and be somewhat vague with who's doing what, but this just makes writing the script entirely painful, so I'm going to change that entirely. I will definitely be mentioning political sides from this point here on. Never mind, I'm actually just a liar, or I'm really indecisive. Your choice. I'm just going to not mention sides and instead mentioning an argument that does happen in real life. Typically, most people seem to think most political discussions, like I said, the example I use, most people seem to think political discussions are about deciding whether or not the local sports team gets some funding, or the local school gets some funding, or the local science team gets some funding. That's not necessarily what politics could be about. See, usually, the serious topic that people are breaking their friendships from are usually things to do with race, gender, sexuality, nationality, which are all identities that people don't choose. Unfortunately, we've always lived in a society in which people with certain identities have always been marginalized. Before, people didn't really break up friendships because of politics, because the people with marginalized identities couldn't really vote, or had to keep it just on the extreme hush-hush, otherwise, bad things would happen. So unfortunately, yeah, politics didn't really break friendships that much. Otherwise, yeah, it does, and, I guess people care more, I guess. I don't know why people like to compare things to back in the days, because back then, some people with marginal identities either couldn't vote, or had to keep it in a hush-hush, otherwise they get the shit beating out of them. And C, most people were very complicit back then, and, people aren't just gonna take that sitting down. Regardless. And we live in a political climate in which these topics are consistently discussed. And personally, I think with issues like this, it's completely understandable for someone to not be friends with someone that doesn't respect their identity or their existence. And now, you might be saying, well, that's a given. You obviously shouldn't be friends with racists, sexists, transphobes, homophobes, and xenophobes. Except, there are quite a decent amount of people in the world who are very much like that, and whilst they're not a vocal majority, they're definitely not a minority either, because there's definitely enough of them to catch your attention, especially as we've seen with certain events in recent times. And keep in mind, some people have to live with people who are like that, and or have family members who are like that. And personally, I think the mature thing to do is to remove yourself from that environment. Mentally, it's not a good decision to stay with someone who's like that, unless, you financially depend on them. But okay, let's say I'm being a bit too dramatic from starting from the extreme. Let's say it's not the extremely bigoted person. Let's say it's your average everyday person. And still, the other person still wants to break their friendship over someone else's positions, right? See, just like cancel culture, no one is really breaking their friendships over small issues as if let's say someone's part of a political party that does not like big government. And that person is not going to get cancelled for saying that on Twitter, and they're not going to break friendships against them because of that. It's clearly never been the reason. Let's be honest here, just like cancel culture, no one is breaking their friendships because someone doesn't like big government. That clearly has never been the reason. Maybe this person we're using as a theoretical example has inferred from their friends' positions and opinions that they may be bigoted because of the political party that they affiliate themselves with. You might think that one person is being extremely presumptuous, which they are. In that case, the friend should end the friendship themselves if they feel like the other person's judgment is extremely harsh. Personally, I like to avoid socializing with someone at all costs if I feel their judgment is extremely harsh to the point that it'll probably affect how other people treat me, and I would rather not associate myself with them. That aside, what tends to happen in situations like this is that usually they're arguing. For example, let's say they're arguing about poverty amongst black people. This one person believes that poverty in black people is heavily contributed by historical factors, a poor education, and an unstable environment. Meanwhile, this is an argument I've seen way too often, is that poor choices made by an individual causes poverty amongst black people, and not just systemic racism. See, that one person believes if you've grown up in a poor environment, you aren't always going to make the best choices in life. And at that point, I would assume that you just didn't know that because, hey, we don't understand everything, but I am not every person on the planet. See? You see that? And different people from the same political leanings are going to have different mindsets going into an argument or going into disagreements, and they're going to infer very different things. It's all very dependent on the person. Maybe the person may infer from their friend's arguments that they lack empathy because their friend doesn't really think about changing one's living conditions or enable them to make good choices, because it's almost as if they don't want to make things better for black people. That's what they've inferred from their friend's opinions. Because there are three sort of implications you can get from this. So it kind of implies, at least to that one person, is that their friend either doesn't care, is ignorant, or really believes that individual decisions will help an entire demographic just not be poor anymore. On a side note, humans aren't just born with innately good judgment, it's something you either stumble on or are usually taught. I'm of the opinion that humans are extremely malleable people and can fit in anywhere, and will all go through the same changes if we were hit by the same thing. And let's say your experiences have mostly been people who fall into option A, you're probably going to go with option A. In the case of option B, you just tell them how bad environments make bad choices, and if they agree, cool, but if they disagree, that now only leaves the two other options now. Because if someone really doesn't believe that bad environments results in bad choices, because then at some point it becomes incredibly difficult to convince them otherwise. And if you had experiences with people like that, it is completely fair to assume that A, they don't care, or B, they really believe it. If they don't care, it's usually an indication that they lack empathy, and from there, you can definitely infer a lot about that person's own characteristics, usually. If you can get the vibe that someone lacks empathy from their political positions, which you can kind of tell most of the time, especially when it comes to things to do with race, gender, sexuality, and nationality, things like that. You can clearly tell. As for someone who really believes what they're saying, that one person could reasonably infer that their friend has been tricked into believing this, or have been indoctrinated, or they have other issues which I won't get into. And so that one person may think that this friend of theirs is a lost cause, and may not want to associate with them, because they see that their friend is unable to think about serious issues properly, and won't change the issues that that person cares about. It's a very emotional thing, and politics usually, for most people, are an emotional topic because it involves their lives. Of course people are going to act emotional about their lives. They're going to feel incredibly strongly about that if it's something about the well-being of someone else. Like, of course, yeah, someone is going to have a strong opinion about an essence of well-being of other people or themselves. Of course people would have an issue with that. Especially when the well-being of someone else doesn't really affect the well-being of other people. So obviously, yeah, they're going to not want to be friends with that. And yes, the friend may not have ever said they don't care, and they may not have said they genuinely believe it, but these are things I feel like most people can infer, because unless you're a completely arrogantly evil person, no one wants to say that they don't care about poverty and black people. They cannot read their minds, but they can infer what one says or what one does before making judgment, which is something that we all do subconsciously. Like I said, the reason why people don't pick option B is because of experience, and also, to be honest, if that one person is part of a marginalized group, it gets kind of tough having to always justify why you deserve equal treatment or why your well-being matters. So it is usually just far easier to not be friends with this person and want to put yourself through stress which could be narrowly avoided. Because if you really think about it, it's kind of hard when, let's say you have a friend whose political positions don't exactly give you any benefits for your well-being when your well-being is already in danger, or that your well-being isn't a concern, or they are content with your well-being as it is, or they honestly think that your well-being is fine. They genuinely believe that you are fine. And having to try and convince someone who doesn't believe that can be quite a difficult task, because to this one person in the example, they genuinely believe that, yeah, they've been wronged by, the world or the system of the, where they live. And seeing that one person not believe them, they're kind of going to feel some sort of way about it. It's almost like a betrayal of some sorts. It's like, damn, my own friend doesn't believe me. My own friend doesn't believe that I'm in pain. My own friend doesn't believe that I'm going through some tough times in the world, and this one political opinion I have, or this one political position I have, this one thing I'm advocating for has a chance to change it, but they disagree what I'm advocating for, and they don't believe that I'm in pain. So yeah, of course people aren't going to want to be friends with someone like that. It's kind of a difficult thing to continue that kind of friendship when that's happening. I don't blame people for feeling that way, personally. Would I drop my friendships because someone has different political opinions than me? Not really. I can usually find out why people believe what they do, and decide from there if I wish to associate with them or not. Personally, at least for me, it's not the political party that they affiliate themselves with that would bother me. It's why they hold certain opinions that would. And I know sometimes people would drop a friend because of the political party that they affiliate themselves with, and sometimes I can just about understand that. Sometimes people just don't want to find out why. It's usually the case that the political party has a history of worsening the issues that person cares about. So clearly they're going to infer that from that person's political positions is that they too hold the positions of the party, because that's the party that they represented themselves at. Another reason why people might dump their friends because of a political party, it also tends to be the positions held by the political party itself. Whilst they may not hold it, sometimes, usually the positions their political party holds tends to represent the person. Not always, not that it necessarily represents them, but whatever position the political party has, they need to think carefully about what actually it is that people care about, because otherwise it's gonna make people look bad. If your political party holds a position that majority people disagree with, then that's a problem, then, isn't it? Therefore, that means your political party doesn't really care about the people who vote for that party, then, do they? And in the sense that the party represents the people, also the people represent the party. Some people could have an experience with people from that party and not having great experiences from people from that party as well. And so therefore, sometimes they may project those feelings onto that other person because they have allied themselves with the same people that don't like their existence. And so usually they may, drop friends like that. Personally, would I do that? Probably not. But I like to understand why someone holds their positions. At least for me, it depends on the political party as well, because there are some you'd probably not want to be friends with, most likely. But regardless, part of why I hate this opinion so much is that it immediately assumes that it was just the opinion that bothered the person, and not the things that you can infer with said opinion that bothered the person. And there are some people who like to hand wave it just by saying it's just an opinion, despite the fact that opinions aren't always about whether or not someone doesn't like your favorite car, but instead the existence of someone else. It's usually about something more serious that affects the well-being of other people that people are arguing about when it comes to political opinions. People aren't breaking friendships because of politics, they're breaking each other because of very clear differences in how they treat people or how they think about other people's well-being. In the example of poverty with black people, I've seen a lot of people who have a severe lack of empathy with this, and I cannot lie, it is pretty difficult not to become jaded seeing that. So of course, I can see why someone would cut their friends off for that. If someone wants to cut their friends off because of political positions, that's their freedom to do. I mean, I wouldn't like it, depending on what party the person is a part of, and also, that's very much dependent on how that person feels about the political party. See, it's all about feelings here when it comes to friendships. Friendships have nothing to do with facts. It's all just feelings anyways. So people are allowed to drop their friendships over feelings. But also people can drop their friendships over facts, realistically. Friendships are mostly about how you feel and not If you feel like your friend isn't treating you right, or if you feel that your friend has a lack of empathy, then it's completely fair why you would stop socializing from them. The problem I have with this argumentation is that the people who minimize it seem to think that every opinion someone has aren't extremes, or the extremes don't exist. Or they seem to assume that people with extreme opinions, they no longer exist, even though they very clearly do. And we've seen people with extreme opinions before do some crazy stuff, considering we've seen events happen. One thing I also hate about the phrase "politics shouldn't break friendships" is that it's almost really malicious. Personally, it's very malicious the way it's hand-waved. Like, it's hand-waved as if political opinions are this minor thing, and the reason why it's probably hand-waved as this minor thing is supposed to paint the person who dropped their friendships as whiny or as, like, oversensitive, even though that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's supposed to paint them as weak for dropping their friends over such a small issue, even though necessarily it wasn't really a small issue. They never dropped their friends over a small issue. They dropped their friends over a big issue that they saw was quite damaging, or quite dangerous, that they saw, and was kind of, I hate to use this word, but problematic. And yeah, that seems a reasonable enough reason to not want to be near someone if you feel like their things are problematic. Remember, friendships are mostly based on feelings, not facts here. But regardless, I despise this opinion so much because I feel like people who use it want to make themselves seem as if, yes, I'm strong, because I don't drop my friends for having terrible political positions, because I like to keep all my friends with terrible political positions, and personally, I feel like that's a bad idea because you're just enabling them to continue having those terrible opinions in the first place. Part of having friends is that you try and convince them, or you at least try and get them to empathize with you, and if they don't empathize with you, then that's a problem. If that's a problem, if they can't empathize with you, I don't know why. I don't know. I would find it entirely difficult to socialize with someone who has a severe lack of empathy sometimes. But yeah, remember to like, comment, subscribe, go to my second channel. I stream on Twitch now, inconsistently. Go to my main channel in which I upload music. And just a reminder, I am not a celebrity, I'm just some person talking to the void.